joined by Matthew DeBritz of ESPN. First of all, Matthew, thank you for taking the time. And let's start off by kind of give us a little bit about your backstory.
Well, I worked at ESPN 11 and a half years. Got the job right out of college. Not right out of college, but maybe 6 months later. It took a long process to get in.
Yeah.
So, I graduated in May and I started in October of 2000. And I've been there since then. Worked in the international division, been working my way up, and that's pretty much my story so far.
Did you always know that you wanted to go into sports?
Yeah, I had an idea. I mean, I think as kids growing up, that you want to play professional, and as you get older, you realize that's probably not going to happen. So the closest thing I could get to it is be working on it. So I took television and radio in college, and I also took a sports studies minor, and I thought that was the best way. And I really got interested about that stuff there, more interested. And I said, yeah, I want to work in sports.
Who would you say has influenced you the most along the way? Do you have mentors or people that have really helped you out or, kind of got you connected with ESPN?
There's a couple people that are, that are a little older. I don't want to embarrass them, so I won't say their name. But
Okay.
there's when you start working, I think in an environment such as big as ESPN, there's so many people, there's so many different ways people look at things, and you find a couple people that you latch onto and kind of align with because you'll go to battle with them in like any sort of production because you've seen what they can do, and and those are the people that you want to line yourself up with, people that you can see you being like them in a lot of ways and having similar interests and similar work ethic.
And you've worn a lot of hats for ESPN, and like you said, you've worked your way up. So if maybe you want to start a little bit at the beginning when you first got there, when you were working as a production assistant, and just kind of how you have worked your way up the ranks there.
Sure. Well, I got in there in the international division, which I wasn't expecting to do that. I met someone at a job fair when I was ending college, and actually I was in the elevator with the people, and I didn't know at the time. They wanted to know if I was part of like a vendor or if I was actually looking for a job, and I said, no, I'm looking for a job. And I went over their table and realized, and they dropped their banner. It said ESPN International, and at the time I had no idea what that meant. I had seen ESPN, but the line for them was like around the corner. So I said, I'll go talk to International, and I talked to them. And since I had some Spanish skills in my background,
Okay.
they wanted to talk to me. So I got one person's card. And I pretty much bothered her for the whole summer, and eventually people called me, and I got the interview there, and got the job. It was pretty fast moving. I mean, had the interview, and they wanted me to start soon, and I said yes, of course. And I got there, and I was working in soccer division, international soccer, and it's not like it is now. Like every game is on TV. 10, 12 years ago, 12 years ago, not 10. they the games weren't on as much. I mean, there was the World Cup, and there was a game on that you really had to pay for if you were a soccer fan. So, like, not a lot of us in this country really grew up watching soccer. I mean, I did, and I played it, so it helped me a little bit. And with the Spanish skills, that was an angle they hired me for. So, to kind of get more acclimated, I actually played PlayStation all the time and played it in two different languages just so I could understand and know the guys' names. And so when I saw them again,
Okay.
I would understand them. So, and then when I first got there, I was just logging games, and it's kind of a great way to just know players and stuff that you don't know, and tactics and things that you would never see before. So I started doing that, and once they were okay with me doing that, I started cutting highlights for games, and then eventually I started assistant directing for games, and then I got my shot producing and directing games, and then from there, other sports open, and you just have to be willing to work on different sports at different times. So that's kind of how it's going.
Is there a particular aspect? I mean, you mentioned, doing some directing and then obviously producing. Is there a particular aspect you like best or a particular sport? I mean, because you've kind of covered the gamut.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a basketball fan through and through. College basketball. I grew up in Syracuse, New York, so that's where college basketball is huge. It is like a pro team there, and probably like 6 or 7 years into my career, they asked me to start working on basketball, NCAA basketball, and I said absolutely I would, because kind of felt like work too much, because you just sit there and a lot of the things that you know already about the history of the game and players in the game, I already knew them. I didn't have to be like looking at stats or looking up with a computer. I could know, and I could know that something was right or something was wrong without, kind of searching or researching, and that's a huge advantage. So, was your question before, did I always want to work in sports? I guess I did when I was younger, probably before I ever even took classes, and just being a fan.
There's this perception. I mean, obviously ESPN, its reputation speaks for itself. And what is it like, kind of being on the inside of things? Because you have the perception from the outside and as a viewer, and actually working there. What is it like?
Well, I mean, it's good. I mean, you go in and you're working on sports, so it's hard to say to anybody that, hey, my job's not fun or not, because we're working on sports, and at the end of the day, I mean, you have to look at it from that perspective that it's sports, and you're working on sports by watching it, and you're getting paid to watch sports essentially. I mean, there's a little more things than that, obviously, but you got to definitely put your work in. You still have to put your time in. But I mean, it's a pretty crazy environment at times when you're walking down the hall and you see The Rock, or you see a mascot. Like say some of the commercials. Those are kind of more for fun, but you will see those things at times where you're walking by and you'll see Magic Johnson, and I remember passing him in the hallway, or Mike Ditka, or Michael Irvin, or all these guys that you grew up watching, and you see them at in person, and then you realize they're more like normal people, just like we are. So.
Is there a particular moment or kind of aha moment for you where you kind of went, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this?
Well, I work in, like I said, I work in the international division, and the celebrities that I would know in our division are a little different than maybe everybody else would, but I'll tell the story anyways. There's this guy that works in international. His name's Mario Kempes, and he's an Argentine soccer player who scored in the World Cup. But he, if it wasn't for Diego Maradona, we'd be talking about him all the time. Not so much Diego Maradona and Pele. He's in the same breath as them.
Okay.
But he's the most, laid back kind of guy, and you would never know that. But when we went to Istanbul, Turkey for the Champions League final in '05, and all the English fans found out who he was, and it was like a swarm of people around him, just everyone crowding him and asking questions for autographs and stuff. And to me, he's just, my colleague, but outside the world, he's huge. Yeah. So that's probably one of my moments, I'd say.
Cool. Well, I know you have a Twitter account, and it's obviously not affiliated with ESPN, but if you could kind of touch on your perceptions of social media, and the role they play in the sports landscape, especially, there's people at ESPN, on-air personalities, a lot of them have Twitter accounts, and then, a lot of the producers and different people there also have Twitter accounts.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way we're going. I mean, whole shows are being predicated on Twitter and Facebook now. I don't know if you watch that show, NFL 32, but it's very interactive. Same with Sports Nation.
Yeah.
Same with a bunch of other different shows. So it's just crazy, because it's like a whole other news wire. So the news people also have to be searching people's Twitter accounts on top of searching for news. So, and it also kind of, in some ways, it cuts out the middleman. And for athletes, they don't want to hold. Tiger Woods, for example, he doesn't want to hold press conference anymore. He just wants to be on Twitter. So it's changing. It's changed everything. I mean, people are on Facebook, they're on Twitter. I know producers tweet stuff. I have a Twitter account, but mostly for me to read. I might tweet once in a while, but I try to stay away from that, because I don't want someone to hold it against me later.
Yeah. You mentioned the Tiger Woods thing and how athletes, that's kind of their voice now. Has it made your job more challenging as a producer, to deal with that of athletes not really wanting to talk directly to the media, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and I'd say no, because they're still going to be on camera, because they want that exposure to be on camera still. I mean, Twitter, yeah, it's good for, the other night when Amari Stoudemire broke, whatever, he broke the fire extinguisher. Yeah, he apologized to the fans, but he's still got to make a statement. So, I mean, it gives us a little more instant, gratification, I guess. But they're all all going to do stuff, and who knows, they might start doing their press conferences like we're doing this talk right now. So hey, that's what they want to do. We're going to find it. I mean, anything that's on the internet is been found by our people, and like an example, when Stan Van Gundy kind of said he was going to be fired, a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
and Dwight Howard walked in on him. Well, I mean, that was on OrlandoMagic.com, and as long as they clear us to use it, we can use it. So, there's no hiding, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We'll always get the guys on camera at some point, and we'll get them to talk.
You mentioned earlier how much the sports landscape has changed, over the past 10 years or so. And I mean, do you feel like, as a student now coming out of college who wants to go into sports, that you have to be in tune with the social media side of things and know how to do that all?
Absolutely. I think that, you have to evolve with what's going on, and what's going on is social media. So it's how people talk now. I mean, you walk down the street, people aren't talking, they're texting, they're on their phone, they're on their iPad, they're on their computer. I mean, in this conversation 10 years ago would have been a little more difficult, right? So
Yeah.
it's totally different, but who knows, in 5 more years, it could be a whole different game again. So you just have to be able to roll with it. That's what you're looking for the answer.
Yeah,
But I
no,
mean,
absolutely.
social media is what rules us right now, it seems like so.
You know, going back to, all the different positions you've had at ESPN, is there a particular aspect, that you enjoy most about your job?
They sound kind of strange, but it's that you can walk in and at any moment it could change in an instant. Whereas, I don't know, I'm not sure. I've only worked, on TV and stuff, so I don't know. But it's every day where you don't know what's coming, and it may be frustrating for some people. It is frustrating for me at times too, where you're like, oh man. But it's also the fun part, where you're really on your toes and you really decide, hey, I'm going to make this show great, even though that I just found out that this story just broke right as we got to air or something like that. And the thinking on your feet like that is probably the most fun part about it.
Mm-hmm. Earlier you talked about, trying to learn Spanish and playing the PlayStation to familiarize yourself with different guys' names. What are skills that, you find the most valuable with all the different positions you've had since you've kind of moved around so much?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest skill I think is that, you have to be flexible. And what I mean by that is what we just talked about a second ago about how you can walk in any second, but also that you have to be deciding that you want to work on a sport. And if someone asks you to work on a different sport, you have to kind of say yes, that whole thing, the power of the yes. And I was one time in my career, I was talking about soccer. I traveled for soccer the year before in Turkey, and it was a really cool event. And the next year, um, there was the same event that was going to be in Paris, and I really wanted to go to that, but I was told, you're not going on that. You're going to travel on IndyCar.
Okay.
And at the time, I kind of had this reaction, like, I don't want to work on IndyCar. I don't know anything about it. I'm not a gearhead. I'm not into motorsports, nothing.
Yeah.
But I did do it, and good thing, because that was a really good experience for me. And I was a field producer there. I was the AD. I was coordinating with the whole freelance crew. I pretty much ran it. And if I had gone to that event in Paris, one of my colleagues would have, and they would have done that. And I've also made some great contacts and friends for life, just because I was on that circuit for 2 or 3 years. So, I guess that's being flexible, I think, is number one. I think you think that you may be this one person or one, working on this one show, and then you could change shows at any instant and make an impact there, and then make an impact for you for later in your career. It's come full circle sometimes, and working on IndyCar helped me work on SportsCenter, because not many people knew that much about IndyCar, because there was a lot of foreign guys in the IndyCar circuit that they didn't know about, but I knew them because I actually was on the circuit. So
Yeah.
it just you never can tell, I guess, is the point, and that's one. And like, just cliche, but you gotta be a hard worker, and you gotta be passionate. I've heard all these guys in the sports network thing talk about being passionate, and that's true, because if you're not passionate, people can tell pretty quickly that you don't want to be in that spot, or you don't want to be there, and you don't want that. You want people to be like, I want to work with that person because they're passionate, and no matter what they do, they're working hard at it.
Yeah. I bet when you started, you probably never would have guessed you would be working on IndyCar and, international soccer and all this stuff.
Sorry, I had a drink of coffee there.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
no, you don't know, and that's why all skills that you may find, that you may work on, or all shows, I should say, can lead you to something later on. So you just have to be open to it.
I know it's hard to kind of forecast the future and stuff, but for you, I mean, 10 years from now, I mean, do you have ideas of where you would like to go at ESPN, or what you would like to kind of evolve into there with the network?
No, I don't honestly, and that kind of goes along with I was saying before how things change so fast. There could be a day where someone approaches me and says, I want you to work in programming, which may not be my cup of tea.
Hmm.
Working at a desk is a little different than working on what I'm doing, but there might be a time in my life that I want to do that, or I want to get out of the production game because you work nights, you work weekends, you have crazy schedules sometimes, and there might be a time where I want that. As of right now, I'm fine from what I'm doing. I still like production, I still like being in the mix, I still like traveling. So, you know, I know that's a question everyone asks me, but I really don't have that answer right now.
No, that's fair. I mean, you don't need to. So, it's just always interesting to ask people. You kind of touched on it a couple of questions ago in being flexible and stuff. But what advice would you give to sports business students out there about who are looking to land their dream job in sports?
Well, one way you can focus yourself on what you really want to do is you work in a job that you don't like, or an internship. And before I started working at ESPN, I said I had like 6 or 8 month time where I wasn't really working. I was just doing whatever. And I got so frustrated that I drove to Washington, D.C. My brother lives there, and I moved in with him. And I said, maybe if I'm here and there's a job opening, I can get it faster than if I'm calling from, upstate New York, because they can say, come in for the interview and I can get it. So I did, and I was broke, and I had this. I knew someone from one of my classes that was working there. They didn't tell me what they were doing, but they said they had an opening. And I said, okay. I went down there, and it was it was an acupuncture and Chinese medicine certification place.
Oh wow.
So it was mostly data entry, but they paid well, and I was broke, and I didn't know what else to do. And at that time, I wasn't sure if I still wanted to make an effort to be in, like broadcast or TV or anything like that. So I said, no, I'll do this. Maybe I'm not one of those people that really care about my job. Well, I'll tell you what. After 2 weeks of doing that, I'm like, I hate this. I can't do this. And luckily ESPN had called me, and I pretty much told those people that Friday, I'm out of here. But they didn't care because they kind of knew that when I came in. So it's always good to take an internship or a job, even if you don't think that it's really what you want to do, because it may focus you to do that and do whatever you're supposed to do. I did a semester at I went to Ithaca College, but I did a semester at Washington. No, sorry, American U in DC.
Okay.
That's where was a really cool course. Like all we did was go and talk to different journalists. That was like our classes.
Wow.
And then I had an internship at a radio station, and it was okay, but I could tell pretty soon that that's really not what I wanted to do, because I was like their intern on their show, a morning show, like 5 in the morning one day, and I was a promotions person the rest of the time, and it just wasn't my speed. It wasn't my speed. So that's why I say it's important to even to try it, because you may not know. You may not know if it's for you or not. And some people come into the sports, production business, and they don't get it, or they don't like it, and they want to get out, and that's fine. But all those things you can do beforehand and try to be in it, and you can even work in it for a while and just not want to be in it anymore. Everyone does that too. So
Yeah.
that's my best advice for that, is just always to try those things and to talk to many people, and in your school or anyone that is offering some sort of like a journalist is going to be on campus, or they're going to be nearby, or you should go to those events and listen to them talk and listen to what they have to say, because they've probably been in the business for a while, and they probably can tell you better hate to say it, and maybe some of your professors could, but
Yeah.
but some of my professors, I think, actually did work in the business for a long time, and that was valuable too because they had a little different, more, different perspective than people who just were professors. So
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that a little bit. I went to Arizona State, and I definitely had classes that were extremely valuable, but definitely other ones that I mean, I honestly probably learned the most at a lot of my internships, for stuff that I'm using now, you know. So,
and
um,
the school might also have like a TV station, right? I mean, most schools do have something, and you got to get involved in those. Also it'll give you a nice dose of what it's like. I mean, I remember doing that Saturday mornings, and getting up at like 9. I mean, in college, getting up at 9 in the morning on Saturday was pretty tough to do that, and
yeah.
we did it, and we did stuff like that. But I mean, you get an idea of what it's really like because you're in TV and radio or whatever content, we should call it these days, you're going to be doing those days where you don't want to get up at the crack of dawn. So those are all things that would help.
You definitely at ESPN you have internship programs, and what are some traits of the interns that really stand out in your mind at ESPN?
They're just people that you can tell that want to be there, and they never say anything about their days off or their hours, and they're always paying attention when they're being talked to or shown stuff. They want to be there, and it's evident, by that. The people that are always concerned with their days off and maybe looking at their phone while you're talking to them and stuff like that, and those people can be weeded out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And, you know, few people that I've worked with were interns beforehand, and I knew that they would be back because I could tell the way they would work and how they acted and how they carried themselves. And they also weren't afraid to jump in and make a mistake. You got to be able to do that. If you just hang back, then you're just like a fly in the wall. So
Yeah.
you don't need you.
I know you got connected with ESPN through the job fair and the whole elevator kind of experience that you had. But what would be your advice for people? I think ESPN is one of those companies that a lot of people going into TV, whether it be behind the scenes or in front of the camera, they aspire to it. And what would be your advice, to eventually get to work at ESPN?
Well, I think it just goes along with what I was saying before. Is be passionate. And just because you didn't start out right there at ESPN doesn't mean you can't get there. And I kind of say to people, younger professionals, move towards your passion, and a lot of the stuff will fall into place. You'll start to meet the right people, you'll start to talk to the right people, and you'll do all those things that you need to do. I don't have any specific magic or way to do it because my way was completely different than most people's. I've seen people get jobs off job postings. I've seen them just by networking with people. I've seen them get jobs because of somebody they know,
Mm-hmm.
because of who they were in college. If they were an athlete or something, people may know them. But, a good way is to always, I think someone was asking me this too on LinkedIn, and I told them, there's got to be a resource close to you, like close by, whether it's a team or a stadium or something where you can volunteer or you can work there, even if it's not your full-time gig, where people from ESPN will be there for an event, and they hire people called runners,
Oh yeah.
hire people that just do, that just coil cable. And yeah, those aren't always the easiest to find, but if you're hanging around the stadium more, if you're in that area more, you probably have a better chance of meeting them. Or you're hanging around in the places that people do after the race or after the game. If you're in those areas, you probably have a better chance. And if you're talking to someone, you might as well kind of strike up those type of conversations. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? So I don't have a exact formula. I just would say that you move towards your passion, try to be around those people as much as you can, and something may break for you.
Oh, that's great advice. I actually, when you talked about the runners, I spent a lot of games during college or even after college for that first year working as a runner for ESPN when they would come to town to Phoenix. So it was a good experience. Definitely, humbling in some ways and a lot of hard work, but it was really eye opening. So it was a lot of fun. How can people, from the Sports Networker and the Sports Executives Association, how can they connect with you online?
I'm on the executive one on Facebook, the password protected one. I'm on that.
Yeah.
I posted my thing on there probably a while ago, and I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So those two ways are the best way to connect with me. And I usually don't turn too many people down, but I don't know. I've listened to Lewis talk a few times where he's saying how people contact them and they're asking for something. I kind of feel the same way. It's like you're asking me for advice, that's one thing. If you're asking me for a job, it's kind of tough for me to be like, well, I don't even know who you are. So, you have to think about that when you're approaching people too. Their reputation's on the line. When I'm recommending somebody, I'm putting somebody a word in for somebody, I have to make sure that they're valuable and they're going to help out, because if they don't, then it's on me, and I don't want it to be on me.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. You got to be selective. So, is there anything else, that you want to talk about, or any other advice you have, or anything I haven't asked you that you feel like is important to know? Because this is kind of your forum right now.
Well, I just, as I said, going back to, kind of like the power of saying yes. That's the biggest thing I think that even I've learned in my career is just you have to be flexible and say yes to things, even if it looks bad, even if it seems bad. And especially when you're a younger professional, and that's a mistake maybe I had made a little bit more, that, some things I would worry about that I shouldn't have worried about, or some things that I could have done differently to help me now. But, after a while, you gotta just let those go. But sometimes I've seen really high potential people that are working in our, younger people that come in, and they have a lot of good skills and they have good work ethic, but sometimes they do stuff that may uh, anger people that are a little older. And we got to keep that in mind. I know that we're a different generation. I'm like on the cusp. I'm not a millennium. I'm still a Generation X, so I'm like right on the cusp there.
Yeah.
But a lot of the millenniums, they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, and that's fine. But you got to realize when you're going to do that and when it's appropriate, and who's hiring you, because people who are hiring you are much older and they may not be as much into the social media or care about texting, or if you're on the phone. So as you're coming in, as people that are coming in as professionals, that's one of the biggest things I would say to them is be careful with your phone and be careful what you post online, because if you have so many great skills and you posted some weird picture on Facebook, someone's going to find it and see it, and then you're going to miss out on a job that maybe you were qualified for, and who wants to do that? So be smart about those things. That's the best advice I could give is, chill with the Facebook and Twitter and texting while you're at work, okay?
Yeah. No, that's really good advice, because, like you said, once it's on the internet, it's there permanently, and it's likely that somebody's gonna find it. So,
Yep.
well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you have to go to work later, but really appreciate you and all the advice and information you've offered. So, have a great day, and really appreciate it.
Sure, anytime.